is just fantastic. Captain's Log, Subdates 210706.7. As we finally conclude the tale of NXIVM, I have to admit that I'm starting to learn some valuable lessons from these failed cults. Mine will be the very bestest, like no one ever was. I have been waiting for quite some time to make this follow-up video to my first video concerning the NXIVM cult. The previous video was concerning the leader, Keith Ranieri, inmate number blah 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 blah. Today though we're going to be talking about Allison Mack. Allison Mack was the second in command. She had quite a number of responsibilities. Many of you will have heard of her, by the way, from TV shows like Smallville. And for the sake of it, she was in charge of the harem, H-A-R-E-M, I don't care which pronunciation it is. Basically, all the women that were collected, branded because of the idea that came from Allison Mack's mouth to distinguish the women from other women, that gave themselves up willingly to Keith to deal with his thirst for the sex. And as I've mentioned Smallville, Tom Welling did in fact speak out about this, mostly to say
NXIVM. Thank you, Rob.
Oh,
yeah, with that thing. And when fans are told when we do Q&As, they're like, don't say a thing about it, and we never talk about it.
Well, it's easy for me. I didn't know anything about it. There you go. I was very surprised to read anything about it. It sounds very bizarre. Allison was always a nice person around me.
Yeah, supposedly one of the girls is coming out now. She pleaded guilty, and she's going to tell all the truth, the whole big mess.
And so did the guy who played Lex Luthor on his podcast.
What's the deal on the set of Smallville, a show that used to be on with Allison Mack? Did he get the vibe or anything that she was into some freaky sex cult shit?
I haven't responded to this. It's funny because I've chosen not to talk about it only because it's shocking. And all I can say is this. When I was on that show, Allison was the sweetest, most professional. She was just a great girl, great actress. And, I remember, doing some self-help stuff.
And before we dive into the update on what has happened since she was found guilty, because we've been awaiting sentencing, the NXIVM leader Keith, who is currently serving 120 years in Tuscan, is currently appealing the decision against him. I'm not entirely sure what he plans to do, whether he'd rather just have the death penalty, which would at least then tell him he has a way out, unlike the 120 years where he will never see the outside of a prison during his lifetime, or one of these ISO cubes. Lol. So to start with the updates, we go through a number of blogs and articles that circulated concerning the responsibilities of Allison Mack, where she took over the management of the harem, whatever, the cult, where all the wamens were, and made changes which included the DOS, dominant over submissive, or the vow. This was a ritual of branding slaves, which is oddly reminiscent of inner city pimps. Interestingly, Allison Mack herself, along with her now ex-wife, Nikki Klein, were not branded. No doubt they didn't want to touch any of that Ranier peen. Those that were a part of this collection of slaves were then blackmailed with pictures, videos, and confessions that were then used to control them. These converted a group of women into a stable of slaves, with Allison Mack acting as a slave master. There were allegations that she may well have compelled her female slaves to have sex with her, but that's not really been proven at this point. And it was reported that Allison Mack took great pleasure in controlling these people. And just in case you've never seen the particular brand they used, this is it on someone who was once a member. So during her trial, Allison Mack pled guilty for her role in the sex slave cult. The charges were racketeering and racketeering conspiracy charges, which included extortion and forced labor. With Mack saying in the court, "I must take full responsibility for my conduct. I am very sorry for my role in this case. I am very sorry to my family and to the good people I hurt through my misguided adherence to Keith Ranier's teachings." At the time, Allison Mack faced 20 years in prison under the charges that she pleaded guilty to, which at the time wasn't sus in the slightest, which is a shame because it should have, but we will get to more of that soon. In 2017, Allison Mack married Nicki Cline. In December of 2020, divorce proceedings began. It was around this time that because she was on bail, Allison Mack was seen out and about wearing ankle monitors. She also had claimed the reason she married Nicki Cline in the first place was not because she loved her, but because Keith Raniere told her to. No doubt that is a brutal pill to swallow for the person she's now divorcing, and I hope that person fleeces her in the divorce settlement. Then again, wasn't Nicki Cline involved in the cult as well? It was around this time that Keith Raniere himself was preparing to be moved from the prison he was currently in to either a supermax or just general population, which has been a tad concerned because he believes firmly that his life is going to end the moment he gets into general population. For quite some time after this, the whole story went a little quiet, and the reason why was because, honestly, beyond getting pictures of her seen out and about in public wearing an ankle monitor, nothing was really happening until last week, where Allison Mack decided to make a final statement as it were, with regards to what she had done, courtesy of a letter, where she said, "I threw myself into the teachings of Keith Raniere with everything I had. I believed wholeheartedly that his mentorship was leading me to be a better, more enlightened version of myself. I devoted my loyalty, my resources, and ultimately my life to him. This was the biggest mistake and regret of my life. I'm sure your ex-wife agrees with this sentiment wholeheartedly." It was around the time of the release of this letter that things started to look a little sus. Even her lawyers believed that she would receive no jail time, not only because of a guilty plea, but because of something else. She had in fact cooperated with the investigation, eventually. Add to that she had in fact started publicly denouncing Raniere and NXIVM along with her regret, with her attorney saying there is thus no need to impose an additional sentence of incarceration on Miss Mack to achieve specific deterrence, which I fundamentally disagree with. I think we all know what I think any suitable sentence would be for a sex cult that I'm not at the centre of. We'll get to it in a moment, don't worry. So as she pled guilty, and was then found guilty, we get to the sentence. Da-da-da. Allison Mack, weeping tears in court, received a mighty, lofty sentence, which under advisory sentence guidelines should be between 14 and 17.5 years, on the charges of racketeering and racketeering conspiracy, 3 years. She led a sex cult, a wing of women slaves, branded them. The idea was hers. She told them what they could eat, how many calories they could eat, how to dress, and who they were gonna have sex with. She lorded it over a bunch of women who were her slaves, who she could then feed up to either Raniere or to herself if she felt the need. But because of the cooperation in the case and the fact that she eventually not only denounced, apologized, spoke out, she got 3 years, meaning she will be out in 18 months. Interestingly, the prosecution support this. You know when we talk about sentencing gaps? Yeah, there's a big one between these two. Allison Mack doesn't actually have to go to prison right away. She actually has to surrender to prison on the 29th of September, which gives her time to set her affairs in order. I personally think she should have done that long before she was sentenced, because she was out the whole time. Quite frankly, I'd yank her, drag her into an ISO cube and leave her there, because now we get to my sentence. 120 years. I'm all about that equality, yo. And the evidence against you, much of which is in the public domain from victims of this cult, is damning against you, and a 3-year sentence is a Mickey Mouse sentence. Now, as we're done, I'd like to know what you all think about this. This is the final time I'll address NXIVM, so do let me know below. Really drive up that engagement, either by suggesting your own sentence, which I'm sure is going to involve a lot of comments going around the idea of, but why are they still alive? in that ballpark anyway. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight for Murder Fun Time, have a fantastic day and thank you all very much for listening.